welcome to my review of the Atreyu Base Trail. I've got a fresh version here that needs, I'll tell you about the tongue in a second, but here's the overall specs, then I'm going to get into it. The review will be much longer than this, but this is kind of the little intro. So 3.5 millimeter lugs on an outsole. We've got a 6 millimeter offset supercritical EVA midsole. We've got a reflective TPU upper, fully breathable, fully drainable. Standard microfiber tongue with foam backing. My sample size comes in at men's size 9, around 10 ounces. I've had one at 10.2, I've had one at 9.8. So we're gonna see where that confirmation pair comes in. And the stack height on this is an all-in at 25/31. That's featuring the outsole, the midsole at 15.5, 16 or so on the forefoot, and 21.5/22 on the heel, and then the 5 millimeter eTPU sock liner, inside adhesive to it. Coming at you with the full review. I'm going to tell you about the ones that I ran in the Grand Canyon for the rim to rim to rim journey I went on with my buddies Don, Shad, and Darian. It was a beautiful experience. Thank y'all for tuning in. Let's get into it. My box. First, I will review the hat that was given to me by my buddy Don. It was $12.99. It was made in China with the SKU 47405-HATRG. I wore this for the entire 43, 44 miles for the rim to rim to rim journey we went on, and I was tasked to wear it throughout because it was my birthday. It fit pretty well, you know. It's a little, just wasn't the right thing, so I had to put a little, I had this a nice little draw strap there that kept it on, but I had to put a sweatband on my head so it wouldn't move around too much. I liked the hat. The hat was a nice little morale booster. And so that was part of my gear. Had a Solomon pack and was fueling with UCAN and Performance Tea Endurance Flavor. Both were just a gem. Had a little bit of Martin at the end. And was wearing the Atreyu Base Trail. Now, I want to give the spoiler alert before this thing is over. It's that the Grand Canyon really always wins. And what that means is it's simply too grand to think that you can beat it. But in a test of shoes against the canyon, we gave the Base Trail a win on this because they simply didn't lose. And what I mean by that is when we set off, we ran downhill and into some flat rolling all the way back up and then back across the canyon. For context, I had no idea what I was getting myself into, and was invited by what I would like to call seasoned veterans of the ultra trail space. And so, admittingly, I kind of kept to myself, but I was a little bit intimidated by the entire trip. But I had to go test these things. I always like testing a final iteration of these pairs at an event. The original prototype was tested of the base model was tested in Ironman France, Ironman 70.3 World Championships in Nice, and the confirmation base model was tested at Ironman Arizona, the full. And the artist was tested on both a 50-mile run that I did here unsupported in Austin, Texas, and at another subsequent Ironman event after that. And the base trail will go down as being tested on the rim to rim to rim journey. Included in this shoe is a nice little TPU upper. Now it's got some reflective weave in it. This one's a little dirty, but I think this one's better to review because this is what I actually use. So it's got a little bit of reflection in the weave. Thought that would be cool because of, you know, headlamps shining in the early morning or the late night or in the middle of the night, whatever you're doing. And just kind of have a little bit of awareness of where the next pair is, in front of you or behind. I personally swapped this tongue out for the tried and true base model tongue, microfiber with foam backing. The sample room got this one confused with just a kind of a, almost like a lycra tongue, but I wanted this one. So that's what it'll be for the confirmation pair. And this pair had, this sample round had a little bit less adhesive on the under layer of the black microfiber lining, but it didn't bother me any. In this particular version as well, I took away from the kind of like they would die cut the pieces, the microfiber and the TPU, and then like heat weld them together. But I actually wanted more stability in the heel collar, so we went with our traditional kind of stitching construction there. And honestly, it did a great job. If I had to critique anything about it, which I'm looking to change hopefully on this final iteration, I've said that for the past 2 rounds, but I'm like 98% confident that this next one, I've got 2 versions coming in. One is more foam right here around that heel collar, and another one actually has the microfiber being turned over. We're using with some like foam elastic backing as well that can like be turned over the back and have like a little puff here on the collar. So I'm going to test both of those and pick a confirmation out of those 2. But nonetheless, this collar construction with the light heel counter and just this simple foam backing inside the microfiber and the TPU really provided that extra support that I needed to feel confident with each stride, especially on the downhills, in the Grand Canyon, the uphills, the hiking over the rocks, stuff like that. And simple lacing system, nothing crazy. I like to turn my laces around and throw them in there. We had a little elastic piece in there that you could fold them under, but I just kind of like the vibe of throwing them in there, doing what you want with them. The midsole is new tooling. It's actually the same 6mm offset neutral that I love and really believe in. But this midsole itself is about 4 or 5 millimeters wider on either side, including about 5 millimeters total wider on the heel than the standard base model for context. And it's made out of the supercritical EVA. And the liner has the eTPU liner at 5 millimeters. The outsole, we've tried probably around 3 or 4 different compounds. This is the one that I like the best. I'll hold it up right here and talk about it. The lugs taper from 3.5 millimeters down all the way to 1. And that was by recommendation of a buddy of mine that that often lugs are really overbuilt, and for this particular shoe I just really wanted to build something straight down the middle. You know, a snappy trail shoe with a good amount of grip does the job, but nothing too excessive. Maybe down the road we can create a model with like a 5 millimeter lug or something that can, you know, some shoes you can like snip the lugs and do all that stuff. This one, we kept it really simple, although I like all those designs. I wanted to keep this one fairly simple with just a little comb pattern and bi-directional kind of chevron lugs in there with the wasp logo tooled right in. And again, those were 3.5 millimeters, and let's see, and they held up. Yeah, still holding true at around 3.5 millimeters. And so slight degradation on the kind of chewing of those. I probably put in 40 miles before, so this shoe has roughly, and actually I did about 20 on the road, so call it 80, 90 miles on these, and it is a softer rubber compound. I wanted that for the sticky and grippiness of the whole thing. This shoe is built to be a trail shoe. It's not built for the road, but and I like that functionality of it. So if you're going to go get one of these and run purely on concrete, you're going to find that the lugs will probably take more of a beating than actually if you use them as intended, as more of an off-road enduro shoe. I mean, you could probably use it 80-20 if we're going to talk about that. But the ride on concrete is actually really great. I still like to test this shoe on the concrete just to make sure that the ride is balanced, stable, and is good for going with those kind of long endurance days as well. Other than that, I just thoroughly enjoyed the ride. I found the heel to have, with that extra kind of volume in the heel, especially on the width, the downhills were well greeted with a nice plush heel strike. That was my tendency going into that, and that extra just kind of soaked right in. There is no plate in this shoe, but I didn't feel anything piercing the bottom of my foot. It was just a nice natural ride, which I still am very much into the neurological connection from the brain to the foot. So feeling the trail was a big deal for me, without the expense of not being comfortable or plush. And I think this hits that like really, really happy medium. Can't wait to see what y'all think. But in terms of that, I do think that it strikes an incredible balance. If I had to put a mileage on it, I would say that this shoe is going to excel for things up to the most technical terrain. We're talking like scaling the sides of, craggy mountain kind of situations. Like, you're probably going to want a shoe that's, built from technical mountaineering folks, not from road running folks. But other than that, like everything down from, it was beasting over the Grand Canyon terrain, and that was super technical. And let me just kind of put it into context. It was rocky downhill, requiring sure footing, and we were going at a pretty good clip. We were running downhill, no problem there. Great traction. And then when we got to the north rim, it wasn't snowing, but there was snow on the ground for the last mile. We were probably hiking at a 20 in between a 23 and a 30-minute per mile pace for those last 2 miles. And into that last mile, we were wading through snow and watery snow. It was crazy. So held up nicely. Some buddies of mine were in another company, and they're offering, and those lugs were at 6 millimeters, and I think that they preferred the grippiness of the snow with those 6 millimeters. That was just a great compound that they had. But I had no problem getting through. We had some, trekking poles and everything. But when I got up there, I was super pumped about it. Now, the upper is designed to be exceptionally, drainable. So any water, you're going to absolutely just lose it out the side because it's fully breathable. It's basically the water will run right through it. And the design on this was build a shoe that was lightweight, plush enough for comfort, fill the trail, but also good drainability, and just a nice, like, snappy, balanced trail running shoe. And even in the snow, I went into it thinking, like, man, this is going to be insane, but it wasn't. We held up really nice. Maybe a little much for any kind of trail running shoe at that point, because it was hiking uphill at a 30-minute per mile pace through the snow. So that's just an interesting situation, which is why the Grand Canyon always wins, I would imagine. And it feels like something in between the base model and the artist, but it's got traction for the trail. In terms of the midsole, it's the same tooling as the base model at that kind of like 15 and a half, call it 16, and then 21 and a half in the heel, so call it 22, for 6 millimeters offset. So, but with the 5 millimeter TPU insole plus the 3.5 millimeter lug plus the base layer of rubber on there, so you've got about 2 millimeters in there, so an extra 5. We're looking at an all-in of, Joey, can you check my math on this? We have, let's do 4 millimeters plus 5 millimeters plus 16. 25 and 31. So it's about a 25-31 stack shoe all in, and it felt pretty on par with those. Again, that supercritical EVA was nice and plush. No foot pains, no hot spots. If there was a hot spot, I had it before the Grand Canyon when I was breaking in the shoe, and which is why I'm kind of getting this heel kind of revised, either with more foam or a pullover on the back. But it would be right there. I just didn't want people to kind of get into the shoe and go for their first run and drop a hot spot. Other than that, it was just nice at home and roomy. But yeah, so that's the base trail. Now I'm going to tell you kind of just like what I think about it. And when I do these events to test a shoe, I'm not really thinking about the shoe. I'm not thinking about the stack height. I'm not thinking about the upper. I'm not thinking about anything but the event. And this was exceptionally true on this trip. I was with 3 amazing athletes. I felt safe the whole time. I felt like I was working very hard, and I felt like I was being challenged by the nature of the terrain and the event and the altitude. I mean, if anything, the altitude would have won. I mean, there was probably 11,000, 12,000 feet of climbing that we did in the entire trip. And so at the end of the day, my review is that even doing something like rim to rim to rim in an effort to also review the shoes, it becomes kind of interesting, because I guess what I'm trying to say is it's not about the shoes at that point. I mean, the shoes did great. At the end of the day, my feet didn't hurt. Everything was fine. I was prepared. My nutrition was dialed in. Although I needed more electrolytes, I wasn't used to that. So I needed to get some salt at the north rim to kind of recover a little bit. Take about 15, 20 minutes sitting down and get ready for the journey back to the south rim. But if anything, it was my nutrition that needed work on the trip, and I didn't think about it at all. So that's what I look for in a piece of footwear as a tool. I don't look for much else other than that. The reflective stuff is cool. It serves a purpose. Maybe some people will use the headlamp and kind of use the reflection like tendencies of it. take it or leave it. It's a balanced midsole at 6 millimeters, you know, offset. And honestly, my review is that my trip was more about the run than it even was about the shoes. And again, that's exactly what I like to look for in a product. Turn off the bells and whistles, get in touch with the basics, honor simplicity, all that stuff is very true in this shoe. It's going to be true with the other stuff that we do. I hope that's sufficient as a review. My little bonus points on this is going to be that when these lugs do wear down, probably, I don't know, actually, they look pretty darn good. I mean, they just look like I went to running the Grand Canyon for sure, and some concrete there before, but honestly, I'm really stoked about how they held up after such a beating. But I'm also excited to get them fully shaved off when they're kind of dead so I can run on the road with them. I'm going to use this same tooling, spam risk. I'm going to use this same tooling for a possible iteration of a base model style Roadrunner with a road suitable outsole on it. It's one of the things I've been working on. I'm really happy that the balance of this particular midsole tooling gave me a natural ride, but other than that, I hope I'm not rambling too much. I know you guys are looking for some information on this. The next round is on their way from the sample room. Again, very slight revisions, only in the heel that I'm looking at to ward off that kind of like first and second run hot spot that I experienced. Other than that, I'll keep you guys posted. From there on out, looks like we're in down payment for purchase order territory, of which as a company we'll definitely have to do a pre-sale on this shoe. It'll be an expensive shoe to make, but it'll also be in the same kind of price point structure that we're proud of, and depending on the final FOB of the shoe. So we'll take a look at all that as it's kind of coming into fruition, and keep you along for the journey. As always, thank you all for following along. Thank you for a beautiful trip. Goes out to Don, Darian, and Shad. You guys were amazing. Thank you for showing me what life is all about again, getting out of this apartment, getting into the world, seeing one of the great wonders of the world. The Grand Canyon is a magical place. Next time, I do not want to run it rim to rim to rim. I want to camp at the bottom. I want to camp at Phantom Ranch. I want to spend 2 days looking at it, and I'm probably going to do it in the base trail. I'm not going to probably do any running, and I'm bringing a big camera with a big old lens on it, because boy, you just can't see enough of it. That's the reason that it always wins. It's just spectacular. To anybody watching this, if you watch towards the end, do yourself a favor, book a trip, go out there, get prepared, do your homework on what you need to bring, especially if you're going to go run the heat. We ran in February 20th, so it was kind of cool. It started at around 22 degrees, ended at like 60 or so, and then back down to sun. We ran literally from sun up to sundown, and then an hour after ended with a 50-mile gust of wind and pure dark with headlamps on, back for the last hour, which was a little bit wonky, but other than that, it was just a masterful trip, and I can credit that to the three lads that I got to go with, and their expertise coming in as a newbie to the terrain, especially in the altitude. That's all I got. Adios for now, everybody. Thank y'all.